Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for yet another Kathy Barnette show. I am so grateful for each and every one of you. I'm going to just go ahead and jump right into what we're going to be talking about today. And depending on how long I go, this may be a two-part episode because there's a lot to talk about, and I want to make sure that we give it its due justice. So I want to talk about what has happened over the past 100 plus days since October 7th. I think this is so important. You don't hear a lot of people talking about it. What's going on in Israel, what's happening between the Israeli people and the Palestinians. And so I want to make sure that this is a topic that does not go into the dustbin of history, but it is currently happening right now as we speak. A lot of things are happening. So I want to take us through very briefly, high level of what has transpired over the past 100 plus days since October 7th. You know, October 7th has gone down in the history books as one of the largest calculated mass murder of Jews in a single day. I don't think we hear about that enough. Put into those terms, the largest calculated mass murder of Jews in a single day. So this is very serious. We're still talking about 9/11, and yet more than 2 times of the people died on October 7th as a direct result of Hamas. It was Hamas who attacked Israel. It wasn't the other way around, but it was Hamas who attacked Israel. So what has happened between October 7th and today? Well, on November 26th of last year, 2023, you know, my first language is English, so y'all bear with me, but I'm going to try to pronounce his name as accurately as I can. Jibril Rajab, who is the secretary of FATA's Central Committee, came before a packed room of media in a hotel and justified Hamas October 7th massacre. This is what he said. He said, Israel is responsible for causing the attack due to its aggression on all the Palestinian land. Now, what aggression is he talking about? And what all of the Palestinian land is he talking about? He said, Israel is responsible for what happened on October 7th because Israel has been engaging in aggression on all of the Palestinian land. So what aggressions on all the Palestinian lands? Now, we've heard it. I know you guys have heard it, but most people just walk right past it and don't think twice about it. But when you hear people saying from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, what they're talking about is from the far east side of Israel. Many call it the West Bank. It abuts the Jordan River. So from the Jordan River all the way out to the Mediterranean Sea, that's all of Israel. So when they say from the river to the sea, Palestine or Palestinians will be free, what they're calling for is the complete annihilation of Israel. Because when you ask them the question, well, what happens to Israel if you're going from the Jordan River, which goes all the way across Israel to the Mediterranean Sea, then what happens to Israel? They just kind of look at you. And when you force them, they will, I've seen it with my own 2 eyes, they would just blurt out that Israel will be gone. Israel will be no more. So when the secretary of FATA Central Committee says Israel is responsible for October 7th because due to Israel's aggression on all the Palestinian land, he's not just talking about the West Bank or Gaza. He's talking about from the river to the sea. Well, he goes on to say, October 7th, what Hamas did on October 7th, thwarted the Abraham Accord that tried to integrate Israel in the Middle East without resolving the Palestinian issue. Now, this is FATA. So for those who may not know, you can go back and look at a previous recording that I did, my first recording that I did right after October 7th, back in November, where I kind of walked through the 5 W's, the who, the what, the why of all of that was happening at that time, circulating, encompassing Israel and Hamas. And I talked about all of these different pieces that go here. But listen to what he said. October 7th, what Hamas did on October 7th thwarted the Abraham Accord. Well, what's the Abraham Accord? The Abraham Accord, if you remember, under Donald Trump and Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, they were able to bring, we often say, can there be peace in the Middle East? To which I would always say, no, there could not be peace in the Middle East, right? And again, you can go back to my early November recording and you can kind of hear why I'm saying that, or why I would have said there's no way on God's green earth will there ever be peace in the Middle East. But then lo and behold, here comes Donald Trump and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and they were able to cobblestone together the Abraham Accord. So the Abraham Accord is an Arab-Israeli normalization, because most of these places have in their charter and their bylaws, most of these Arab nations have within their bylaws the complete and utter destruction of Israel, or they do not recognize Israel as a nation. So here come Donald Trump, Jared Kushner, unconventional individuals coming together, and they get the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, as well as Bahrain, to come together. This was on September 15th of 2021. They signed an agreement, the Abraham Accord, that they will begin to normalize relationships. These Arab nations will begin to normalize relationships with Israel. Wow. Oh my goodness. Again, go back to my November recording and you will hear me talk about who is this war between. Is it really just between Israelis and the Palestinians, or is it a much broader issue to encompass all of the Arab nations? And I lean towards the latter, where here you have the Abraham Accord normalizing relationships between Arabs and Israelis and bypassing the pebble and the shoe, which is what I believe Palestinians are designed for. They are designed to be a perpetual pebble in the shoe of Israel and America and anyone who just want to move on with life, where you have the UAE, the Bahrain, and I think a couple of other Arab nations coming together and said, you know what, we're over it. We're over all the killing. We're over all the mayhem. We're tired of behaving like barbarians. We want to move into the civilized culture. And we want to start normalizing relationships with Israel. This is what the secretary of FATA, which is, in the Palestinian state, you have two main political parties. You have Hamas and you have FATA. So we know what Hamas did. They're the ones who acting like a bunch of barbarians. And I will talk a little bit more about that, give you a little bit more color of why I say this is completely uncivilized and unacceptable by any standard of how these people, and I'm using that word, people generously towards Hamas would behave in the manner in which they did on October 7th. But here you have Hamas, one political party, and then you have FATA. FATA is typically, they're not recognized by Israel as the best option, but they're certainly not Hamas, right? So the view is we can work with them. We can work with the FATA political party. But here you have, after October 7th, over the course of 100 days, here you have the secretary of the party, the other dominant political party, FATA, coming out and saying what Hamas did on October 7th thwarted the normalization of relationships between Arabs and Israel because they don't want it to be normalized. They want this issue to remain. So we don't have the other branch of the other political party and among the Palestinian people coming out and being reasonable. Instead, they're saying, one, Israel is responsible for this. Two, what Hamas did was thwart the normalization of relationships between Arabs and Israel. The Arab world is not allowed to have normalized relationships with Israel until they resolve this Palestinian issue. But now go back to my November recording to hear, can there ever be peace between Israel and Palestinians? And I spend a lot of time that I'm not going to spend here talking about that, but go back, listen to that, and then work your way back up to this. I will say this, Yasser Arafat, when he was brought into Camp David with Bill Clinton, the Israeli prime minister, trying to broker peace, Yasser Arafat was the president over the Palestinian people. So they brought the president of the Palestinian people to Camp David to have a discussion to try to broker an agreement, a peace deal between the Palestinians and Israel. And it was Yasser Arafat who said, I only represent the Palestinians. I don't represent the 1.5 billion Arab Muslims. So I can only, in other words, I can only come in here and say, I would like peace for the Palestinian people, but this isn't just about the Palestinian people. This is about the 1.5 billion Muslim Arabs, Arab Muslims all around the world, right? So how do you ever get peace when you're not just talking to one party, Israel, can't just talk to the Palestinian people, but they got to talk to a little bit of everyone. And then when Israel turn away from the Palestinian people and try to talk to and enter into an Abraham Accord with the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, and then they try to turn and they enter into the Abraham Accord with Bahrain to try to normalize relationship, Hamas over here says, no, 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 no. We are going to commit genocide on your people. We are going to commit the largest calculated mass murder of Jews in a single day. Don't you pivot away from us and try to normalize relationships with our cousins in the rest of the Arab world, because this is what we would do to focus your attention back on us. Does that sound reasonable to you? Moving on. So I know there are a number of people who say, but Kathy, Hamas is not Palestinians. Palestinians are not Hamas. They're not the same. Now, I don't know every single Palestinian in Gaza or the West Bank. So I am going to generalize. You got to put out these qualifiers for people nowadays. I am not saying I know every single Palestinian on the planet, but let me tell you what I do know. One, I just read to you the statement of the Secretary of FATA Central Committee, Jarib Rajab. But now also the president of the Palestinian people, the Palestinian state, Mahmoud Abbas, has yet to come out and condemn what Hamas did. The opposite has happened, like November 26th, as I just read. But then also, according to the Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research, 58% of Palestinians said they would vote for the leader of Hamas, Ishmael, if elections were held. And the current president of the ruling party, Mahmoud Abbas, who is the president over the Palestinian state, the state of Palestine, and the president of the Palestinian National Authority. He is a part of the FATA party. He believes this survey to be true. And the reason why I know he believes that is because they have not held another election since 2005. They were going to hold an election in 2016. They canceled those elections because they knew with a high degree of certainty that Palestinians were going to elect Hamas. And the FATA political party knew exactly what Hamas was going to do once they got in power, because they did it in 2005 when they tried to share power between the two groups, Hamas and FATA. Hamas went on a killing spree. So they have not had another election since 2005 because they, in the FATA political branch of the Palestinian state, recognized that 58% or more of Palestinians would vote for Hamas as their next leader. 78% of Palestinians want Abbas, who is the current president, a part of the FATA party, to resign. As I said, there's been no elections since 2005. 2016 elections were canceled. And then what should we do with this statement from Abbas, who said, Hamas is not an alien group that fell from Mars? Abbas, the current president of the state of Palestine, said, Hamas is an integral part of the Palestinian people. So I submit to you, although we do not know every single Palestinian who lives in Gaza or the West Bank, I think we know enough to begin to say that when we think Hamas, think Palestinians. Because I don't think the people who paraglided into that festival, that rave festival, were Jews. They were more than likely all Palestinians. So, moving on. So what has happened in the course of the past 100 days? One, the more reasonable, quote unquote, side of the Palestinian people, those who fall within the FATA group, have not come out to condemn what Hamas did. In fact, they've actually done the opposite with the statement that I read a few moments ago. The other thing that has happened over the course of 100 plus days is that the International Court of Justice, I know it's a mouthful, the International Court of Justice have just issued their opinion based on a case that South Africa brought to them, claiming Israel is currently committing genocide. So South Africa brought a case to the International Justice Court, or the International Court of Justice, saying Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians since October 7th. Well, the International Court of Justice have just ruled on that. Now, again, it's important to note, and I'm going to continue to do it throughout, that it was Hamas who wrote a check that their behinds cannot cash. They wrote a check by paragliding into Israel, committing the largest calculated mass murder of Jews in a single day. And now you have South Africa saying, but Israel is the one who's committing genocide. I reject that. I think most reasonable people with a brain and a moral compass would reject that just on face value. But let's go a little bit deeper. Who is the International Court of Justice? Well, one, the International Court of Justice is the UN court. It's called the World Court. I don't know, for some reason, every time I think about them, the World Court, I think about the book of Revelations. I think about the one world government, but I'm going to put that to the side for the moment and just remain focused. The International Court of Justice is the World Court, comprises of about 15 judges. They are called The Hague, and they're in the Netherlands, but it's an international court that adjudicates general disputes between nations. They give advisory opinions, but they don't really have the ability to enforce. But let's just talk about that. The International Court of Justice. International, some would say they're not so international because they exclude certain countries, like Israel is not a part of them. The United States is not a part of them. China's not a part of them. Iraq is not a part of them. So international-ish, right? International court. Some would say it's not a real court because all the judges are appointed by their country and they're only doing the bidding of those who appointed them. Okay. So International Court of Justice. They are a part of the UN. Enough said. I'm sure you can kind of weave into that. The UN has certainly been biased, to say the least, when it comes to issues involving Israel and the United States. But nonetheless, the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, just ruled that there may be a possibility that Israel is committing genocide and told them to try to hurry it up. Try not to do so much, try not to kill so many, try not to, knock down so many buildings, just kind of hurry it up. They didn't tell them that they should stop, but essentially move on with it, right? I think that's so interesting. So in the course of 100 days, you have FATA, the other arm of the Palestinian government, other than Hamas. There's only two dominant ones, Hamas or FATA. So you're in one or the other political party. And we already know Hamas has lost if they even had a sane, rational mind, they've lost it. So then you look to the other side of the political party, kind of like Republicans, Democrats. We know Democrats suck. And so now we look over to the Republican Party and we're like, oh my goodness, you're not that much better. And so here you have on the Hamas side, we know, they're lacking a lot. But then you look to the other side and they're not doing that much better. They're actually condemning Israel and claiming it's Israel's fault that October 7th happened anyway. Then you have the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, ruling in favor of South Africa, claim that Israel there is a possibility that they are committing genocide, which is heinous and intentional murder of people for no real reason at all. I think we all know that Israel has a right to defend herself, or at least reasonable people with a moral compass would say that. So, but let's just look at that word genocide, because that just strikes me as so egregious, because the word genocide was created to have a word to describe the horrors of the Holocaust against the Jewish people. And so now to have South Africa, of all people, using that word to describe what Israel is doing to the Palestinians just seems so wrong on so many levels, or at least it should raise an eyebrow. It should cause all of us to kind of pause and stop. It's kind of like seeing a white leftist call me, a Black woman, racist, right? It should cause everyone to just kind of stop and look and, sideways and say, well, what's really going on? But instead, you see the International Court of Justice giving credence and legitimizing the possibility, and now ruling that, well, there actually could be a possibility. There's some evidence that suggests. I think it's also interesting to take into consideration that it is the Palestinians, the state of Palestine, the Palestinian National Authority, the PLO, and all the many other Arab nations, I said it earlier, who they have in their bylaws that Israel does not have a right to exist. It's actually a part of their bylaws, their organization, their organizational paperwork that they believe Israel does not have a right to exist. And then when you hear or that and calling on the destruction of the Jews, and yet here you have South Africa claiming it is Israel that is attempting to commit genocide. Now, it was Hamas who attacked first. It was Hamas who started the largest calculated mass murder of Jews in a single day. But here is Israel being accused of potentially committing genocide. And of course, we don't have to talk much about the whole river, from the river to the sea. But now, on the contrary, because I went to Israel and I got my little notebook here. If you're looking at the video, you can go to YouTube and you can actually see the video of what it is that I'm talking about. But, you know, when I went to Israel, I had my little map. I had so much fun. I just love, I just love the history. I love the people. And I mean, we started in Tel Aviv, went up to Haifa, went into, they have a hospital in Haifa where, and they took us to the bomb shelter portion of it because, as I talked about in the November recording, Lebanon, there was a war with Lebanon, and Lebanon was just sending over all of these rockets, and so into this hospital. And so the hospital built this underground bomb shelter. And so we were down there. Then we went over to the Sea of Galilee. I went up and walked up onto Golan Heights. And now I understand why Israel must hold Golan Heights. You don't understand that until you're there and you see the advantage that they have and what a compromising position they would be in if they gave that land back to Syria. But then we go all the way down to the Dead Sea and just a variety of places. But I remember specifically going through 3 zones of the West Bank. They call it Zone A, Zone B, Zone C. And as we're traveling, we're on a bus, a long day. I'm exhausted. So I fall asleep on the bus, but then I will wake up and I'm looking at these green, lush fields. I see all of this agriculture going on. Everything is just so nice and so beautiful and it's productive. The land is productive. They're producing. And I was like, oh, are we back in Israel? They were like, no, we're still in Zone A, which is the Palestinian National Authority, where Jews are not allowed in. Or I'm in Zone B. Nope, you're still in Zone B. You're still in Zone B, where it is a combination of the PNA, the Palestinian National Authority, and Israel together. So you would see more of an integrated community between Palestinians and Israelis. And then I go to sleep again. Then I wake up and I'm like, are we now in Zone C, which was, primarily Israelis lived. And it's like, nope, you're still in Zone B. You're still in Zone B. And I'm beginning to think, well, this is not what in America, this is not the image that I had in my mind of how the Palestinians are living and how the Jews are treating the Palestinians. The overwhelming majority of the housing, the plumbing, the water, the agriculture, the buildings, the industry is paid for by the Jews for the Palestinians. And it was extremely nice. I even went and looked over I can't remember where I was located, but on this particular landing that on the Israeli side that allows you to look into Gaza. And again, it looked better than most inner cities I drive through now just to get from where I live to get into downtown Philadelphia. I usually take the streets and, what I was looking at in Gaza looked so much cleaner, safer than many of the places I've driven through just to get through the inner cities of Philadelphia. And again, it's all paid for by Israelis, by Jews. So I thought that was very interesting, and that now here we have the International Court of Justice adjudicating a claim brought by South Africa that the Jews are committing genocide, and for the quote unquote court of justice to side with that in any way. I thought that was very interesting, and it doesn't mesh up with what I saw. But the other thing that strikes me, and I'm going to read from my own book, Nothing to Lose, Everything to Gain, because it is the conflating of words. And I love the fact that Israel is being very defensive on the use of the word genocide. It is a word that they've inherited to describe horrors we would not fully be able to understand. I've gone through the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., and I just had to run out of it. Just the brutality and the waste and the evil. Normal humans just cannot abide such things. And so I have, over the course of 100 days, been paying particular attention to how Jewish leaders are standing up in defense of the word genocide, making sure that we don't conflate. Words have meaning. I know in the culture in which we're living in right now, words have become cheap. But words have meaning. They matter. They should matter. Language is important. And I appreciate what I'm seeing from Jews and standing up in defense of Muslims using the word genocide to describe what Israel is doing to them. But it made me remember something that I wrote in my book. In the chapter I called, Yes, Racism Exists. I'm just going to read a little bit of this to you. I said, off the backs of those who came before us, Blacks today have inherited a powerful tool that can assail and beat back real acts of racism. We inherited not only the word racist, but the heart of a whole nation that gives the word its power. And this, above all else, is precious and deserves to be protected. When I, a Black woman, stand and decry the unacceptable behavior of another as racism, I want people to take notice. I want to be heard. I want to elicit a response from my fellow Americans that causes them to come alongside me and say, not on our watch. But when you have white progressives overusing the word to influence elections because they can't effectively argue the merit of an issue, is weakening a very powerful tool to push back against real acts of racism. Black people especially need to wake up to this reality. I'm going to drop down here. We primarily see white progressives explain almost every single issue we are contending with in this nation through the prism of racism, and thus they're cheapening the word in the process. They're diminishing the word in the process. This should alarm every Black person. We as a nation are all growing tired of the overuse or misuse of the word. It's losing its potency and relevance in our nation, and it has. I mean, you have people, especially back in 2020, 2021, through even now, a little bit less now, but certainly in the wake of George Floyd and the NFL and people taking a knee, you will see people just using the word racist or racism just indiscriminately. It was used like a punctuation at the end of a sentence. If they couldn't argue the merit of the issue at hand, then they would just clam up and say, you're a racist, right? When I was running for U.S. Congress here outside of Philadelphia, in my district. I was the first Black person to ever run for U.S. Congress. And I did extremely well. At the end of the day, I outperformed any other person who has ever ran on the Republican ticket here in my district. I even outperformed Donald Trump. I did far better than he did even in this particular district. And yet every time I would hold an outside rally, Black Lives Matter would show up to shout me down. And it wasn't a Black person in the bunch. It was all a bunch of young white children wearing Prada and Louis Vuittons. I mean, you couldn't make it up. Calling me a racist, right? We in the Black community have inherited such a powerful word. I mean, I didn't sacrifice a whole lot to inherit that word, but those who came before me sacrificed a tremendous amount for us in the Black community to inherit a word that when you use it against someone's behavior, it is supposed to stop everyone in their tracks and cause them to focus in on what this person just said or did so that we can, no, not on our watch. You're not going to behave like that. But when everyone uses it to describe everything, and anything, all of a sudden it means nothing. And in fact, we grow tired of it and do long eye rolls when we hear it, right? Hello, everyone. Mike Lindell and My Pillow employees want to thank my listeners for all of your continued support. And to thank you, they're having an overstock clearance and new product sale right now for the best prices ever when you use promo code Kathy. That's Kathy with a K. And you get free shipping on your entire order. Get 50% off the My Pillow 2.0. Also, you get 50% off the brand new flannel sheets that just arrived. Y'all know it's cold out there, so you will need it, and you know they won't last long. 6-pack towel sets are only $29.98, and take advantage of the free shipping on larger items such as mattresses and mattress toppers, 100% made in the USA for sale as low as $99.99. Everything is on sale, from their brand new kitchen towels that have the same technology as the bath towels that actually absorb, the dog bed. And let me tell you, the dog bed is amazing. Harriet, our chocolate lab, she sleeps on it every night. It is, not only is it beautiful, it's comfortable. I found my dog and my daughter laying on the bed all together, but you can get blankets, couch pillows, and so much more. To get it and to get the best specials ever, go to mypillow.com or call 800-988-3934 and use promo code Kathy, and you get free shipping on your entire order. So call 800-988-3934 or go to mypillow.com, use promo code Kathy with the K. Thank you so much for listening, and blessings. So when I see those within the Jewish community pushing back on South Africa, Americans, Palestinians, anyone else, using the word genocide to describe their behavior in defending their nation against an attack they did not provoke. They were not the aggressors, the initial aggressors. It was Hamas. And I appreciate that because I understand words mean something. Language matters. And we need to protect language so that when I say something, you know exactly what I mean. I've watched a number of videos of Israel doing just that, defending the word that, for better or worse, they inherited to describe a heinous act against their people. And I have great appreciation for that. Well, let me tell you who else I have great appreciation for. I should have an image, if you're looking at this on YouTube, of Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. Because once the International Court of Justice came out with their opinion, saying that Israel may be guilty of genocide, Benjamin Netanyahu said, and I quote, he said this on X, formerly known as Twitter. He said, "The state of the Jews arose from the ashes of the Holocaust in order to promise a defensive shield for the Jewish people. Israel, like every sovereign country, has the basic right to defend itself. Nobody will take this right from us, and nobody will stop us from implementing it." I love it. You can almost hear the emphasis on nobody is going to tell us what to do. I can completely appreciate that, because that is the kind of backbone of steel we're going to need, not just for Israel, but in America, right? These are the kind of leaders we should be looking for. People who would say the uncomfortable things out loud. Okay, guys, so we're going to cut it off here for today. And then next week, I'm going to have part 2, because I think we should spend some time understanding why in the world South Africa is involved in all of this, period. Like, why are they even involved? What is their role in all of this? Why would South Africa be the one to take the case to the International Court of Justice, claiming Israel is committing genocide against Gazans? Why is South Africa, of all people, involved in this? Let's talk about this next week. We're going to talk about going to get into some slavery that came out of South Africa. We're going to talk a little bit about Muslims, how they actually treat slaves, not just back then, back in the day, but even still today. I think all of these things are very worthy of conversation, so that we understand, so that we can make good decisions. I love what Frederick Douglass said. You guys have heard me say this multiple times. I will continue to say it. Knowledge makes a man and woman unfit to be a slave. Don't be a slave. A modern day slave where you just do as you're told. Whatever someone says, whatever you read off of Twitter, you believe it. Stop that. We've lived through too much to continue doing that. So we're going to think our way through this. And I think it's pretty interesting. Also, next week, let's talk about just what we've learned as we kind of put a bow or wrap up these first 100 days after October 7th. Let's talk a little bit about what we've learned happened on October 7th. I think that's going to be a little hard to hear. It certainly is going to be hard for me to share it, because I think that level of evil that people can inflict upon other people, most of us have no concept that level of evil really exists, but it does. And I think we need to hear about it. So all of that and more next week. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you like, subscribe, rate, and share this podcast. Help me educate our base. Blessings. Talk to you soon.